Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here co hosting with Gio and my dear friend Brandon from Ontario, Canada. Brandon and I just reconnected for Tech Skis less than a month ago. And what a vibe. And Brandon does lots of different things. He owns several co working locations in the Ontario area. And Brandon, would love to hear your story and how you're involved in so many amazing things.
Well, thanks, Ginger. Yeah, it's great to see you again so soon. And thanks for coming out to Tech Skis. That's one of the ventures that I'm involved in. The On the co-working side, yeah, my main focus is the Foundry in downtown Collingwood. We've got a 7,000 square foot space here with about 250 members in a small community, a very tourism heavy community that I started back in 2017. But I've been in the industry since about 2011 with my first co-working space with a couple of friends back in my hometown of Chatham, Ontario. So that's when I sort of dove into it initially, and three of us really came out of us deciding, hey, why don't we share some office space? We each had our own businesses and moved in together and said, well, now let's open the doors and see if we can welcome other entrepreneurs into the space. And my passion for co-working kind of evolved out of that. So when I moved to the Collingwood area and I took over a video production company, our offices were heavily underutilized. And I thought, well, this is a great spot for a new co-working space. And didn't know how it would go in the small town of Collingwood with 26,000 people, but surprise, it grew pretty quickly. And we've got such a great community of people here. So I couldn't be prouder of the location.
So for people to understand kind of where you're located, like how far are you from a major city? I mean, you said 26,000 people. So, I mean, would you call it suburban? Are you rural suburban? I mean, give people an idea of kind of when you say a smaller community, what do you mean?
Yeah, I would classify it as rural. We're just under 2 hours north of Toronto, so that would be our,
Okay.
our major metropolis. The interesting thing of this region is we have over half a dozen private ski clubs here. So this has become quite the popular area in the wintertime for people from the greater Toronto area to come up and ski and enjoy outdoor activities. It's become really a four-season community, and because of that, we've had a lot of people move to this area full time. I'd say post pandemic, we saw a massive growth of people move to this area. So it's a blend. I would say 26,000 people is the about the population of Collingwood, but on the weekends in the wintertime, I'd say that probably doubles.
Yeah. Well, you also do some other fun stuff, right? At this point, we've heard about a couple ventures. I
Mhm.
mean, you also do some consulting work, right? So talk about that.
Yeah, so I do a range of business consulting, mostly around systems and automations. I've worked with a number of startup co-working spaces, so helped get several spaces off the ground, mostly smaller, similar to mine, helping their owner operators build in systems to help automate and manage the space as much as possible. Because at a size like this, often they don't have the revenue to be able to afford, say, a full-time community manager. So automating the automating the community and automating their operations as much as possible really helps them to be able to manage the day-to-day of the space. So that's sort of the other side of the things I do. And a lot of that came out of my background in web development. I ran a web development agency for 11 years before exiting that and then moving up to the Collingwood area. And then on top of that, I have a new startup that I've been focused on called Gather that is specifically targeting the co-working industry. And it's really we'll call it a community intelligence and community health platform. And the focus of that is around taking a step back from all of these other co-working management platforms that monitor things like revenue of bookings, office revenue, and really looking at the health of the space from a community lens. So tracking social interactions, tracking types of members in the space, and really giving an overall score to how well the space is doing from that side of things. Because what I've noticed is the revenue in a space directly correlates to the connections in the community that you've built in the space. So if you see a member that is leaving the space and has made several personal connections, there's a higher risk of those other members also leaving with them. So it's really around tracking those analytics that I think really helps define the health of a space beyond just the desk rentals and the boardrooms.
Which is an incredible insight when you think about it, that the idea of social connection is such a undervalued when we think about the metrics associated with the spaces. And, what how did you come up with the aha moment that we need to be measuring this in a more meaningful way?
Well, for me, it was really around the years of the operating the spaces that I've had, just coming to that realization that, the focus on community is oftentimes underserved or under monitored. And even at the Foundry here, the majority of the members that are in our space, they have the ability to work from home if they want, but they come here because they want to be around other people. They want to be connected to other people. They want to build those relationships. So that was really the insight around, well, the reason that the Foundry is doing so well is actually because of the social connections that come out of it and the partnerships and relationships, not just because we have all of our private offices full.
Mhm. And I was speaking to a mutual friend of ours, Erin. She was sharing that you're also working on creating that magic for other co-working spaces and taking that vibe, sort of speak, of the Foundry. How are you thinking about that? Are you looking at licensing, or are you thinking about opening new locations, or are you how are you thinking about this incredible brand that you've created and translating into different spaces?
Yeah, experimenting that with that a little bit right now. So I've helped open a new space in Meaford, which is about 45 minutes from here. So it's along the bay as well, another small community that's up and coming. So I've taken those systems and processes and dropped them in place there. So working with the building owner, they knew they wanted to build a co-working space. So I just came in with the systems and implementations and helped with some of the layout and instilled all of those processes in. And then layered on top of that, I have a monthly engagement with them. So some might call it a management agreement. It's not exactly a management agreement, but it's to help with the growth of the membership.
And so we kind of briefly talked about hospitality and AI and some different things the other day. So, I mean, AI has become such a big buzzword, but there's so many different factors around it, right? And, I think is trying to figure out how people are practically utilizing it in today's business environment, not where we're headed, right? Was kind of around some of the conversations we had. And I think there's been some really cool opportunities for dynamic pricing and even kind of the chatbot sales side of it. But, as far as how you implement and operate, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about how you help groups do that?
As far as the like implementation of new spaces.
Well, yeah, and how you use AI and the data that you've come up with. I mean, because data tells us everything, right? And I think we're in this day and age where no longer do you need. I mean, people have had to use all kinds of stuff. I mean, at one point they'd sit there with a clicker when people were coming in and out, just seeing how many people were coming. And then you had sensors underneath tables. And now you can use, when people log into their Wi-Fi, all kinds of things. And so how are you kind of implementing some of those things based off of AI and technology?
Yeah, so similar to what you've already mentioned. So we have in our main space here, Wi-Fi check-in is where members connect to the space, but then that also marks them as actually in the space. And then our systems monitor that. So it ties into our member database. And then what it does is it identifies when members are in the space, but also who they're around in the space, knowing where their permanent desks are or where their office space is. And then the system will analyze that data and say, well, if two of the same members are in the space, at the same time frequently, then there's higher likelihood of a connection being formed there. So that's where some of the AI technology has come in that I've been
Okay.
working on. And then on the other side of things, like the automation side of things, we've tied our door access in with our Wi-Fi and our member management system. So I'm a big advocate for Nexus. That's the platform that we use here. And I built out a whole bunch of customizations for it using tools like Zapier to make it really easy to connect to other stuff. And then I've helped implement that in other spaces. So another space, the one in Meaford, uses the Unify system for their door access. So I've helped them integrate that with the Nexus system so that when a member is added, it automatically creates that door access for them. And it really just uses the existing APIs that already exist out there. So it's stuff like that that I've jumped in sort of on an ad hoc basis with spaces to help implement specific to their needs. Because the one thing that I've learned, especially in these smaller independent spaces, is that everyone is unique on its own. So they all have
Right.
unique challenges and unique solutions.
Well, help me out here, Ginger.
Oh
You're
yeah,
the the
I know.
IT technology person. He's speaking a foreign language to this real estate guy.
I was like, Brandon, wow, that's incredibly sophisticated to be able to understand the movement within your space and the connections that people are making, and being able to feed that data back into your systems to then figure out the health. So what systems are you using now to be able to track, at that level, that you could share, that's available, that may be inexpensive for other co-operators to be able to implement this, because it's so incredibly forward thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, some of it is just basic RFID technology. So knowing when people are in the space and having interactions in the space using their mobile device. So that's one aspect to it. The Wi-Fi system is actually quite affordable, the Wi-Fi check-in system. So Nexus has that integrated in, and depending on the type of hotspots that's used in the space, it's fairly easy to integrate those. So it can track when members are in the space and automate day pass sales, things like that. So all that's pretty accessible out there, even the door access stuff. So our doors are not overly complicated. We here use Yale keypads, digital keypads that connect to the Ring system that we use. So we have our Ring security system, and then that all integrates as well into Nexus. And that's really just through Zapier, which is a pretty affordable automation tool that pretty much anybody has access to. So that's sort of the basic stuff. There's a lot of stuff still that falls on the responsibility of, say, the community manager. So there are still some manual things that need to be tracked. But if you can take those manual tracking points and then some of the automation stuff and combine them together, that's where the insights are really get interesting.
And currently with your Gather platform, is it just ingesting all that data and then creating those connection and health metrics on your membership? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what it does is every user or every member in the space gets what's called a pulse score. So it's 0 to 100, and that's basically how connected are they to the community of your space. And it goes down and up based on their interactions, what events they go to, how many times they book spaces, what desks they're at, who they've connected with in the space. There's a mobile app that kind of gamifies it a little bit, that allows members to share their contact details easily. But by exchanging those contact details through what I call a bump, that triggers another pulse score adjustment, because now it's identifying that two members are actually connected to each other. So there's just a bunch of different layers on top of it that all get collated together and then analyzed.
That's amazing. And are you using AI for that analysis, or yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
great.
the most part, that's what manages that piece.
Oh, that's amazing. And what's like one or two insights that you were completely surprised by when you kind of connected all these dots together?
That's a great question. I mean, the one thing that came out of it that I've now implemented was this idea of silos that get created in the space. And a lot of this happens, I think, in larger co-working spaces where you've got private offices. So if a space has a large number of private offices, let's say team offices, oftentimes there's silos that get created where, say it's a team of 10 or 20 in a private office, they may not interact with anybody else in the space. So that's sort of a trigger to identify, well, maybe there's an opportunity to connect those people to others in the space, because if they're only connected within that internal community of their team, they're not as connected overall to the space. We've seen members leave a company within the space, but then rejoin as members independently because they've connected to the community as a whole and don't want to leave that.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
So, a question for you. We're switching gears. Home. What does home look like?
What
Dogs,
does
kids, wife,
home look
birds.
home looks like a girlfriend that I live with, Kiana.
Okay.
Ginger's met her as well. So she's an
Mm.
amazing photographer and videographer, and did all the photos for our Tech Skis event that we ran. No dogs currently, although we've talked about it.
Okay.
And that's about it. It's pretty simple. I've got a little wood shop that I do. I'm a hobbyist woodworker, so I do some of that as well. And then my large shed filled with craft beer equipment because I'm a home brewer as well.
Wow.
You say.
So, what do you love most about your girlfriend?
Oh,
She is
well,
a phenomenal photographer, by the way. My favorite picture that I have of myself is actually a photograph that your girlfriend took at the Coworking Canada series, and I was like, "My God, she is incredibly talented."
yeah, she is really great. I love her creative mind. I mean, she's an entrepreneur as well, and I love that about her. We're very aligned in that way, and we can what we end up doing oftentimes is we'll be sitting at home over the weekend and be like, "Hey, what do you want to just do like a co-working session together?" And we'll sit down for a few hours and just work together on the kitchen island and knock out a bunch of work. So I love being aligned in that way with her.
Yeah. So, Brandon, do
That's
you ski too? Since you have all of these beautiful ski resorts around you.
Everybody asks me that. So I've been in Collingwood for 11 years. I do not ski at all. I took up snowboarding a few years ago. I don't get out as much as I want to, and I will say taking up snowboarding in your 40s is a little more painful than taking it up in your early years.
true story. Yeah, I tell people all the time. So I snowboard for a long time, and it just got to the point where I'm like, at 47, it's not worth the injury and being down. And so, but I love getting out there and seeing the mountains and everything else. But I'm like, I'll do a couple runs. Once I get snow in my boots, I'm done.
Yeah,
Um,
and we've got incredible hills here too. I mean, I really should spend more time on it. The Osler that we did our event at is an incredible facility there. So I really should dedicate a little more time to it.
Yeah. And well, and just switching gears on tech skis,
yeah.
Brandon, they have the most amazing speakers that show up, and the thesis of tech skis is phenomenal. They have I think the last time I attended this time around, we had a NHL hockey player to Andy Mills, who created Radiolab, to the record holder for Iron Man, including Antarctica, right, Cameron? Yeah, it
Connor,
was just
yeah.
Connor, that's right. Just amazing group of folks coming together, and that's the stuff that, Brandon, you do all the time in terms of your community and just kind of creating such an incredible vibe in these events.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the common thread in pretty much everything that I do comes down to community building. So Tech Skis working with John and Aaron and Mel on that. It's an event of 200, just over 200 people, building out co-working spaces, the Foundry, and even the technology and the stuff that I focus on is if that single thread that connects them all is community. I think that's the piece that I'm the most passionate about.
Well, speaking of events, you actually have you will be at Juicy in a few weeks
Ooh.
in New York, so it'll be exciting to see you there. So you want to talk about what you're presenting what panel you're on and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm on a panel with a few other co-working space owners, and we're talking about the topic is the unscalable advantage. So it's why indie spaces win when big brands can't keep up. So we're a bunch of independent co-working space owners that we're just going to knock around this idea of like what are the advantages that we have over the big guys. You know, we're nimble, we can try things faster, we have this big focus on community in all of the spaces that we operate. So we're really just going to have a discussion around, you know, if you're an independent co-working space owner, what are the things that you can really leverage? What are your advantages that you can help to really build a great business at a smaller scale?
And do you know what day y'all are presenting? I hadn't even looked at the agenda yet.
Yeah, so that's April 14th.
Okay. Well, it'll be good to meet you in person. And Brandon and I were talking the same as Ginger. We've been talking about the GWA Immerse event that we're doing in Toronto in June. So Brandon's gonna probably haven't finalized it, but I think we've got you penciled in with the hospitality driven, what is it, revenue driven hospitality or something like that. The marketing team comes up with the creative names, not me. I just try to move people around and try to understand where they fit in. So I think it's amazing. Number one, that you're an operator. Number two, that you're a consultant, and number three, that you're a techie to the point where you're bringing people together. And so, Ginger, help me understand. Are you part of what is it? The Flex Alliance?
The
What is
uh,
it? What's your
the Future Work Alliance.
okay? Are
Yeah, yeah,
you involved in that too, Brandon?
I'm not actually, no.
Y'all need to drag them over there.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, you guys are going to be in my hometown, my adopted hometown of New York City, so we'll have to do some fun stuff when you're both here.
Yeah, that sounds great.
No, without a doubt. And you want to talk about kind of what your background was before you moved there and decided to open up co-working and all that fun stuff. Like, where did your passion for people come in?
I mean, like I said, the first co-working space, 2011, that was really bringing a bunch of friends together and then
Yeah.
realizing what happens when you open the doors and start to bring even more in. The collaborations that happen, I I I always say that like one of the best things that came out of having a co-working space was this was a few years ago and there's been so many examples since. A member came to me and said, you know, I just met so and so and went for lunch with him and we've decided to launch a new business together. And I say, like, to me that's payment enough. Like that hits me right in the heart. And I love being able to connect people in that way and see those relationships sort of evolve out of that. I've always been a very community minded person. I've been in municipal politics. I've been very community focused at a bigger scale, working on helping at the from a town level. And then I've done work in entrepreneurship through the G20 several years ago with youth entrepreneurship. So it's really all been around helping people build what their passions are. And if we can all do it together in a shared space, I think we're able to go further faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the passion for being able to bring people back to the hospitality part, right? I think that's the beauty of it. The people that are able to deliver and execute on the hospitality pieces because they really are passionate about it, right? I mean, I'll give you a good example. So I went last week, I was in 5 cities in 4 days. I flew into Charlotte and drove down to a small town called Rock Hill, which many people won't know that it's actually where the cornhole, the Global Cornhole Association or something like that is based, which was nuts, right? It was just mind blowing to figure out. But I have a client that I represented that opened up a co-working group, a co-working space down there. And we went down there and I was asking, I was like, hey, there's a Regis there and that's it. And I said, well, have you been to the Regis? And of course, no one ever thinks of that. It always blows my mind. But I know they've been busy. They moved down from Harlem, of all places, to Charlotte, and then they opened this space there. I mean, incredibly passionate entrepreneurs that had been on the corporate side. But either way, I was like, well, let me go down to the Regis. And so literally, I walk in the door, and I don't know if y'all know this. Regis is now key since COVID. They've kept the doors locked of most of their locations. Some of the staff goes against it, but literally you have to knock or ring a doorbell to get in. So I get there, I can't get in. The guy is sitting behind the desk. One of the members comes and lets me in. He doesn't get up to let me in. And so I walk in and I was like, "Hey, it was a Tuesday." And I said, "Hey, how's your week going?" He said, "I'm one day closer to Friday." And he looked
Oh,
back down and I'm just like, "Oh my." I had literally just got done having the conversation of the people at IWG are not trying to deliver any type of service, right? They're trying to show up, open the doors, do their job, and go home, right? They're not going out of their way. But that's a great example, right? We have to be passionate about what we do in order to deliver a good service. And if you're not, you're in the wrong business. It's almost like when you go and you have a bad waiter or waitress, it's like, if you don't like your job, why would you do this?
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's funny because they do so much analysis and like on the back end to determine where these locations should be located, but then they can never get the service delivery down, the hospitality side of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
they're
true in New York too, Gio, by the way. They lock the doors here too.
yeah, there's a book that I always recommend for every new co-working space owner that I meet, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, is Will's Unreasonable Hospitality book. Like that is, it focuses on the restaurant industry, right? But the stories that are in there and speaking to how creating experiences for your guests, that translates so well to the work that we do in co-working. And I think that's a book that everybody that runs a co-working space, whether it's an owner operator or a community manager, should read, because there's some really awesome nuggets in there that can help you transform a space from, like you said, a space that somebody's just come in and heads down working, to something that surprises them and makes them want to continue coming back for more.
Yeah, and just empowering your team to be able to make decisions, right? That's what I love about that book. That's what I love about, Lululemon does it, right? It's like every team member has the ability to make management decisions to a certain price level, right? I know some of the hotel chains do it as well. And when you do that, it makes such a difference in empowering your team and making them feel like they have ownership and that you trust them. But at the same time, the client feels that it's not a, hey, let me go talk to the team and let me talk to my boss or my manager to figure out what I can do. It's like right there in that moment, the decision's made and you feel like you were actually heard, right? And it lowers the frustration level from now having to, go back to your office and wait for a decision.
Right.
And I mean, I think that's the important part about actually having, ownership available and there, right? Like you walk through your space and people know who you are. I mean, it's incredible to have those interactions and have that relationship. So yeah, when people ask me who the best operators are, I always say it's the local or the regional ones, right? And that's such a big part of it and how you build around that. I mean, Ginger, I mean, you've experienced a larger one that's been growing, but the Mullen, right? I know you
The
fell in love
Mullen,
with that.
amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Just the architecture, the interior design, the way that they create these open spaces that you have to collide through other folks, and and you can feel the intentionality in how they've structured the space. Another wonderful new space in New York City is called The Resident, and they've done a really great job taking some of the concepts that you've been working on, Brandon, in terms of like the social connection is so important. And if you can build that, it actually creates that longevity and that membership, which is really, really fantastic. And as companies think about cost savings and workforce, you need to have that individual relationship with those employees that are coming into these spaces and delivering that quality of service, so that if their company decides not to continue paying for that co-working pass, they still want to be part of that community, which is really, really important. And that sense of belonging is going to be far more valuable in the long run, I think, as well.
Absolutely. And I think, a co-working space, I've noticed this mostly after the pandemic when a lot of businesses went into co-working spaces. They set up remote once their offices closed. Is co-working spaces started filling this gap of employee retention in a lot of cases, because when everybody went remote and you didn't see your coworkers face to face, it became a lot easier to disconnect and pull back from that company that you're working for, right? The suddenly like we saw the rise of employees moving between companies, like not as much dedication to the company that they're working for. It's easy for them to leave and move to another one. And I think co-working spaces, because everything went remote, filled this gap of connection that kept people in the space. So a company could retain their employees more likely if they're in a co-working space surrounded by, it may not be people that are even your coworkers. They may be other entrepreneurs, other remote workers, but because they've got that community in the space that they would have had in an office before it shut down, they're more likely to now stay with that company versus leave and move somewhere else.
Absolutely.
So you're pretty well traveled. So is there a co-working space that you've been in that you absolutely just love, that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn as much of this as possible, or that you just enjoy visiting when you're there for, or multiple, right? For different reasons.
Yeah, I think so. The one that sticks out, like that has always sort of jumped in my mind, and I've only been a couple of times, is it's in Victoria. So Victoria, BC, it's on the island, and it's called Quench. And it's kind of a co-working slash club, membership club space, but the vibe's incredible. They're how they hire their community managers. They're incredibly engaging and friendly. They're very warm and welcoming. That one is probably the one that jumps out the most for me, that speaks to the connection and the community piece.
And would you say Quench?
Quench, yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up. It's always for me. That's part of what I love about it, is getting the opportunity to walk in different spaces and tour them and see what makes them unique, what's successful about them. Because it's not always, coming out of the Regis world. It was easy for me to always look at efficiency and look at, you know, a floor plan or things that were very corporate. But then to be able to go look, like, again, going back to my trip last week, I stopped in Charlottesville. And Ginger, I think you've met Rob Archer in passing, but Rob's got a really cool space there in Charlottesville that he operates for a hedge fund billionaire, I think, at this point.
Oh, wow.
And the space is absolutely stunning. But I walk in and I'm like, well, this isn't efficient enough, right? There's only 38 offices in the 2-floor space, and there's a bunch of sitting areas and all kinds of stuff. But just to see the interaction with him and the staff, but most importantly the clients, and to even walk up on clients going, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to get a platinum diamond status, and I'm thinking they're talking about a credit card or an airline, and they're like, no, he's got a waiting list for those 38 offices. So it's like, you get a membership, then you can get a dedicated desk, and when something comes up, you can move into an office, but they don't come up very often. And so that's what they call a diamond elite status or whatever, is when you have an actual office. And so again, I think it's really cool when you create those dynamics and demand to a certain extent, right? So what are your goals for the future, not just for the co-working side, but your consulting side and everything you're doing?
Great question. I mean, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm still every day or almost every day at the Foundry. I love working here. I plan on continuing to work from here. So a lot of my consulting engagements are remote. So I'll continue growing that side of things, but I love being around my community here. I always joke that I don't have a desk myself. I don't have a dedicated desk. I don't have an office. Half the time you'll see me sitting on the couch, which is centrally located on the second floor, so everybody passes by it, because no doubt in a once or twice a day somebody will sit down beside me and just strike up a conversation about what's going on in their business or what's going on at home. Or I just love being around the people in the space. So I think for me, not going anywhere any or very far soon, and just continuing building what I'm building at the Foundry. I'll continue growing it, and then with Gather now, focusing on that to hopefully help other co-working spaces build the community in the way that I've seen it.
And what's your goal with techies?
With tech skis?
Tech skis, sorry.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that was the brainchild of a good friend of mine, John Hillis. He came up with the idea. We're in our second year, and it's meant for founders. It's meant for investors, and we really just bring startup founders and investors together and talk about their their startups. We have a pitch competition where they ride the ski lift up and pitch the VC. But it's again, it's really about connection and forming those relationships. It's we have a WhatsApp group that runs with that, and it's stayed engaged the entire past year of our last event. Like it's I've not really seen anything like it. I'm surprised, but everybody like we get messages from people taking photos with each other. They've run into each other at the airport or somewhere on vacation and say, "Hey, we just ran into this Tech Skis attendee
Yeah.
again." And like again, it goes back to that building community. And I don't know that we'll grow the size of it much beyond the 200. I like to say 200 and 250 keeps it intimate enough that people develop real connections. But we'll have to see where it goes from there. We know it'll come back for a third year. The demand has been incredible. So we'll have to wait and see how it evolves.
And,
Yeah.
I was just gonna add, Gio, like, TechScape was a brainchild that came out of the Foundry, right? You had Erin who was working there when sh at her time at Upflex, and then Jonathan is also a repeat founder, and it was just that community of folks within your co-working space that kind of created this, what other magical moments, like, have you like, what is this? Are there other companies or ideas that have originated because of the community from coming together in different ways that you can share? Because I think that's what I loved about Tech Skis is it's just you've created this community that enabled this fantastic idea to come to life. And I was one of those folks that attended it for the first time. And then I met people in India, in San Francisco and in New York. And I created this community of professional Canadians that I interact with now on a daily basis, but it originated from your co-working space.
Yeah, I mean my best friendships came out of people that walked through the Foundry doors, like Aaron and John and so many others. And on top of that, I I met my girlfriend at the Foundry. So Kiana walked through the door, and that's how we got to know each other. So it's it's not just business and it's not just friendships that happens in these spaces sometimes. So it's and I've seen so many other friend groups form from that. And like the biggest demand that we get, the other surprising insight that came out of a lot of the research that I did over the years in this space alone is we would put out calls to like what kind of workshops, what kind of events do you want to see? We do branding stuff, we do social media stuff. The majority of the requests that came back were we want social events to be able to connect with other people. Like we run a weekly Thirsty Thursday where we get together on the main floor and it's a social hour. We do a poker night, we do games night. Like there's a number of these things, and that's been the highest demand of stuff. People just want to meet other people and connect with them and develop closer relationships. So that's the stuff that I've seen come out of it that makes me happy.
So I'm going to go back to basics here real fast. So size of your space, efficiency, office to open, dedicated desk, kind of tell us a little bit about the actual space.
Yeah, and I think so. I've had conversations with Jamie about this in the past. Like we kind of gone against the grain a little bit. I know a lot of conversation around space makeup is a higher office spaces provide that, that that revenue stream, that solid, reliable revenue stream. But we actually only have 4 office spaces. We're adding a fifth. We're
Okay.
7,000 square feet, so it's a small space, but for a community this size, that's pretty significant. So the majority of it is actually open space. So our main floor
Okay.
is open workspace, doubles as event space. And then our second floor is almost all open workspace with those 4 private offices on the one side of the building. We have a full kitchen, 2 boardrooms, a small and then a large boardroom, and then a number of call pods and meeting rooms throughout the space as well. But that's effectively it. Like the majority of our memberships are 4-day a month and 8-day a month members. Those are our highest selling memberships. A lot of times it's just people that want to get out into the space and be around other people a day a week. They might have a home office and they just want that connection.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. We're seeing, it's easy for us to look at efficiency and how many offices and go, this is what works because it's worked for 30 years. But the reality is it's a continued to evolve, right? It's the evolution of our product types has been incredible. It's no different than it has been for the hotels and hospitality, right? I mean, it's just been so fun to watch, again, being able to walk in different spaces and be like, man, this is not what I expected success would look like, right? But it is, because there's not a one size fits all, right? And so it's what kind of community you're trying to build. What are you trying? What's your goal, right? I mean, ultimately makes such a difference. What kind of experience are you trying to deliver?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've been to spaces where it's majority private offices,
Yeah.
and that works from a revenue standpoint or a sustainability standpoint. But I think I would argue that potential retention and churn is a lot different. Like it's a transaction. So if you have somebody that has an office, it's a transaction and they're likely going every day, shutting their door and not interacting. So the ones that I've seen the most successful are the ones that have a nice blend, but have that open space to form those organic collisions that happen with people that normally wouldn't meet each other.
Okay. So last question, or unless Ginger, you have anything
No.
else. Okay. Last question. You have the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with anyone. Two answers. One, someone that's living, and two, someone that's passed away. Who would it be?
Ooh, wow.
Yes.
Great question.
I've never asked this on this podcast. You're the first. Congratulations.
Okay. Well, so someone that's living. Okay. So I had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of years ago, and we interacted briefly again at Coworking Canada, but somebody that I really look up to in this industry, that I say sort of started this in Canada at least, is Tanya Sermon. She started the Center for Social Innovation, and she started co-working before co-working even really existed. It was 20 years ago that she formed the Center for Social Innovation and built effectively what the current model of co-working is today around community and interaction and connection. So I consider her a bit of a mentor. So absolutely, I would say living, probably her.
Okay.
Dead. Huh. That's a harder one. There's a lot of options out there. Let me see. Hmm. I don't know that I have a quick answer to that one.
Well, if you had a slow answer, what would it be?
Well, this one is maybe a little closer to home for me. So it's not a famous person. And it's not somebody that a lot of people would know. But to be honest, it's probably my grandfather. So my grandfather, Casey, his real name's Oliver, but he went by Casey, got that nickname, Casey at bat. He was a builder for baseball. He was a coach for years. He was a business owner himself. He was an entrepreneur. He ran an upholstery shop. He passed away well over a decade and a half ago. And he was, I think, the inspiration for what got me into being an entrepreneur myself. He ran his own business for his entire life that I knew him. He did it until the day he died, and he loved every minute of it. And he was, I think, the inspiration not only behind being an entrepreneur, running my own business, and doing something that I'm passionate about, but also I would argue the community building side of things. So he was well known in our home community of Chatham, and every day, twice a day, he had what he called the coffee club. So him and a group of old guys would get together at the local diner once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Any given day, there'd be anywhere from 5 to 15 of them. They would just gather around the table, and they would just chat about the day, talk about what's going on in their life, share their stories. And they did that at least for my entire life that I know of, because I went several times with him to sit around when I was a kid. And to me, that's community. Like, that's community building. I think he was very community minded, and I looked up to him a lot for that and for the work that he did. So to me, that's probably who it would be.
That's awesome.
That's
So
amazing.
it's always interesting, when we ask questions like that and how sometimes we don't know, but if you give people enough space to come up with it, right? I mean, and it was very not even fully thought out, but the fact that it turned full circle back to what you're doing today without even sometimes realizing it. I mean, that's the beautiful part about it, is you're living his legacy, right? In a bigger way, because it's not 10 to 15 guys sitting around a table at a diner, right? It's, you have a space, you have a conference, you have all this awesome stuff. So I know that Oliver's looking down and he's proud.
Thank you.
Well, super excited to see you at Juicy and hear you speak and meet you in person, and then excited to have you in Toronto with us for the immersive. And again, thank you for jumping on here and kind of sharing your experience and some of your wisdom and some of your personal life. So really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Gio. It's been great. The conversation's been awesome, and Ginger, it's so great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And thank you, Gia, for inviting me on the
Of course.
podcast.
Yeah.
But I'll see you guys in a few
We'll have,
weeks in New York.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And we'll have to get you on more of these, but appreciate it. Y'all have a great week.
You take
You
care.
too.
Bye.
Bye.